Hello, it's John Heaton, and I'm going to review this album now from Ringo Starr, 1992, Time Takes Time. And just straight off the bat, I'm going to say this is one of the great latter-day Beatles solo albums. It was a good 5 years after Cloud 9. We were into the 90s, and obviously nothing from John for 12 years. George was busy doing Travelling Wilburys stuff and or nothing, and so Ringo came up with this album. And what's great about it, it was completely unexpected, because he hadn't had an album out for 9 years, and suddenly he comes out with this, which is, in my opinion, his second best solo album of his entire career. And the musicianship on the album is brilliant. The feel, the groove on the tracks, even the lyrics, for the most part, very uplifting and very, quite meaningful by Ringo's standards, and good packaging. This is the last Ringo album I picked up on vinyl for a while, because vinyl was going out at this stage. Inner sleeve with the lyrics, and this is the label it was on. So 1992, this is about 3 years after Ringo gave up the booze, so he was clean. He'd already been on tour. I wasn't too excited about seeing him with the all-star band, because I don't really like the fact that Ringo was sharing the stage with so many people, and if I go to see Ringo Starr in a concert, I want to see Ringo Starr. I don't want to see Levon Helm or even Billy Preston too much. And every time Ringo goes out on the road, or has gone out on the road since, he's always shared the spotlight with like 10 other people, and maybe it helps sell the tickets, I don't know, but I'd rather see him do a solo show in smaller venues, playing a whole load of obscure tracks from his solo albums, like for example, there's virtually nothing ever represented from Goodnight Vienna or Rotter Graveur or Beaucoups of Blues or Sentimental Journey. He just does 5 or 6 of his hits. Anyway, I digress. Back to this album. Wonderful surprise, and really up there in the top echelons of Beatles solo albums, in my opinion. The single Weight of the World really deserved to be a top 5 hit, but didn't really go anywhere. I guess in 1992 the general public didn't really need a Ringo Starr album, even if some of us did. Don't Know a Thing About Love is a decent enough second track. Not brilliant, but quite pleasing. Don't Go Where the Road Don't Go was very much Ringo's philosophy on life. Having given up the booze, he was warning people to stay on the straight and narrow, not to get off the beaten path and go crazy. Golden Blunders, a pun on Golden Slumbers perhaps, from Abbey Road, with great backing vocals from Andrew Gold, who you may remember had a couple of hits back in the late 70s, such as Never Let It Fade Away. And then All in the Name of Love is a great closer to side one. Great musicianship from this album. This album was produced by no less than 4 producers: Don Was, Jeff Lynne, Peter Asher, formerly of Peter and Gordon, brother of Jane Asher, of course, and Phil Ramone. So a lot of maestros offering their services here. No offerings from Paul or George on this particular album, which surprises me to say that despite that, it's his second best solo album in my opinion. So side 2 opens with After All These Years, which is a nice upbeat rocker. Nothing brilliant about it, but decent. And then the next 2 tracks are just brilliant. I Don't Believe You and Runaways. And I think Jellyfish the band were involved on the former track. And Runaways, well, I saw him at Hammersmith Odeon in 1992, and I was in the front row, and I was shouted a request. I screamed, "Runaways, Runaways," and Ringo said, "Oh, let me hear what this guy has to say. What do you want?" I said, "Runaways." He goes, "No, we don't do that one. Sorry." So in the concert that I saw him doing in '92, he did Don't Go Where the Road Don't Go, and Way to the World, I think that was it. As I say, he shared the stage a little too much with the others for my liking. But those two tracks, Runaways, is just glorious. Love it. I do remember being outside Hammersmith Odeon in London just before the concert, and some TV reporter came up and interviewed me and said, "What are you doing here?" And we'd had a few drinks and we were quite in a good mood. Talking of drinks, here comes a stag party of beer drinkers. So I stood in front of the cameraman and said something like, "I'm only 32 and all I want to do is boogaloo." I don't think it made the cut of whatever TV news program he was doing, but it was a really fun night out. As I say, I was in the front row. I had a whole bunch of mates with me, and it was one of the highlights of my life. And the same year, I saw George Harrison in concert at the Albert Hall in the Natural Law Party concert, where Ringo guested at the end on 2 tracks. And in the interval, I went into the bar and bumped into Julian Lennon. So that was another magical evening from the same year. And I think more or less the same year I saw Paul McCartney in the Mean Fiddler on his Unplugged tour. So that was a good year for me, 1992. In a Heartbeat, another great track. I'm not sure if Ringo wrote some of these tracks. I think he might have co-written In a Heartbeat. Let me check. No. No, he didn't actually write. I don't think he didn't write any of these tracks. Yeah, he did co-write Don't Go Where the Road Don't Go, and that's it. So just the one song from Ringo on this, I think I'm right in saying, but good, you know, as always, well, not as always, but Ringo's quite often picked good cover songs to do for his albums, and that was the case particularly on the Ringo album, with a little help from his friends, and in most cases on Goodnight Vienna and Rotogravure as well. In a Heartbeat features great backing vocals from Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, very effective, and then the album finishes with What Goes Around, which is a very pleasing closer, a little bit reminiscent lyrically of If You Believe, from the closing track from the George Harrison album, in my opinion. So I was ecstatic to get this album. Most of my Beatle friends loved it as well. Maybe it didn't do that well commercially, but it stood the test of time all these years later, and I love it to bits. Thank you for watching. See you next time.